music fans of the internet? Welcome back to last week's album. I'm Derek.
And I'm Kevin.
And before we go any further, we're going to kick things off like we always do, drinking a beer. Cheers, Kevin.
Cheers, Derek, and everyone watching at home.
All right, so this week we're continuing our year-end lists, and right now we are going to be going through our list of the best debut albums of 2013. A little caveat, this is the best debut albums that we reviewed, because we only review good music here at last week's album. So this is by no means a definitive listing of all the best debut albums in 2013, but definitely a definitive list of the albums that we thought were the best debuts of the year. So without going any further, I'm going to kick it off with the first item on my list, which should be stated, we're not doing this in any particular order, so here we go. My first favorite debut album of the year was Daytona by a band called Daytona, and shocking news right here, they are not from Florida. I was appalled as well. Although I think one of the band members' last name is Tallahassee, so take that for what you will. They are a New York City-based group by way of North Carolina. The members actually all independently moved to North Carolina, moved from North Carolina to New York, where they met up and started a band. They blend together a plethora of different genres, island-themed drums, and layered vocals, crafting their own unique sound. Kevin had a great sounds like on this one. He said it sounded like a daydream of the perfect day on a mythical beach. I thought that really summarized it very well. Some of my favorite tracks were The Road, Old Friend, and Raincoat. They just had a really interesting take on this type island indie rock sound. Just the layered vocals they have there are just fantastic. Really solid debut album from these guys. I'm looking to hear more from them, whether it be based in Florida or otherwise. Kevin, what is first on your list?
All right, Derek. First on my list is the debut album from Diane Coffee, which is the pseudonym. It's not his real name. The name of the album is My Friend Fish, and the name of the guy behind it all is Sean Fleming, who is also the drummer for Foxygen and used to be a Disney voice actor, which you can tell on this album. His voice comes through in a lot of different ways. He's really good at optimizing his voice for different sounds, different vibes, different characters throughout the album. One of its strong points, a little backstory on how I recorded it, he was holed up in a New York apartment for 2 weeks with the flu. He had, I think, one guitar, half a drum set, and an iPhone, and somehow he birthed this amazing, amazing debut album. Some of my favorite tracks included All the Young Girls and Eat Your Love with Sriracha, which Derek also loves, as well as Sriracha in general. And overall, it just sounds like, you know, the Beatles and David Bowie and Motown. And if you like all that, you're really going to like Diane Coffee. And, yeah, you should check it out. My Friend Fish. Derek?
Kevin, that's a great choice. I like how you phrased he birthed this album while he had a flu, because every time I have a flu, I birth so much worse than this album.
Whoa! I don't want to think about it.
Yeah, I don't know. My next one, 180 by Palma Violets. This is a debut album from a very highly anticipated debut from a group of up-and-coming Brit rockers. We thought this sounded like barroom tales of love and loss told over a Clash-inspired soundtrack performed by Arcade Fire with frontman Iggy Pop. If that isn't throwing too much at you at one time, digest it. It's awesome. Key tracks included Best Friend, Step Up for the Cool Cats, Tom the Drum, and Johnny Bag of Donuts. This one just had really high energy. And I thought that this album, it seems like it would be fantastic brawling music if I ever were involved in brawls, which I'm not, so I'm gonna keep it on my playlist for that one time I might be involved in a brawl. Very good album. Looking forward to more from these guys.
It's funny you went with Palma Violets, Derek, because next up on my list is Drenge by Drenge. They are also a couple of British rockers. However, these guys are brothers, a guitar and drum duo. And it's also interesting you said brawling, because one of my favorite tracks on here is called Blood Sports. And a lot of their lyrics in general are very sort of gruesome, very imagery-based. And, overall I would call their music sort of brutal and intense, but not in like any sort of death metal way. But yeah, definitely a barroom brawl vibe. If you like Palma Violets, Jeff the Brotherhood, Nirvana, you're going to like Drenge. In addition to Bloodsports, and a couple other tracks that I really dug were Backwaters and Let's Pretend. They both get really heavy in different ways. Let's Pretend has some amazing drumming on it, a really roller coaster of a track. And overall, these guys just have a knack for composing really strong melodies, really interesting, satirical, like I said before, imagery-based lyrics. And it's a kick-ass album, especially for two very young brothers. I think they're 18, 19, somewhere in that range. So check out Drenge by Drenge. What's up next for you, Derek?
Drenge is also a fun word to say. I'm just going to leave it there. My next favorite debut album of the year is Regions of Light and Sound of God by Jim James. And that album title might be a little daunting, and it's just the imagery it might bring to mind, depending on your concept of God or whatever. Jim James being the frontman from My Morning Jacket. So Jim James obviously been around for a while, but this is the first time he's released anything solo. Although I guess you could have the caveat that he did do a short EP under the moniker Yim Yames, but those were all George Harrison covers, so obviously that is an exception, and so we're calling this one a debut for Jim James here. This was also one of our first reviews under the video format, so also one of our shittier reviews in the video format, but this album was fantastic. We thought it sounded like My Morning Jacket sans the guitar greatness. However, Jim James still illustrated his ability to just write fantastic vocal melodies. A lot more synths and keys here, but it was still very solid. It still had a lot of My Morning Jacket feel to it, although in a very different type light. And who am I kidding? I mean, Jim James writes great stuff, regardless of the guitar greatness behind him. So this was just solid through and through.
Yeah. It was a good album. But next up on my list for best debut albums, one I have not stopped talking about. It's called Wildewoman. It's by a band called Lucius, and they are amazing. They have this really sort of throwback 60s vibe, girl or female-led vocals, two girls at the front, and sometimes they don't even harmonize. Sometimes they just sing together, but it still sounds awesome. Key tracks included How Loud Your Heart Gets, Wildewoman, and one of my favorites, Go Home. And they've got three guys behind them on guitar, drums, and bass who can each hold their own. So all together, you put those five in a room, they've created an amazing album. And this is one that Derek and I both gave a 5 out of 5 rating. So I think we did that for 5 albums, 2 debut albums this year. So if that doesn't tell you much, well, it should. Check out Wildewoman by Lucius. What's up next for you, Derek?
Kevin, my next best debut album is Sistrionix by Deap, Vally. This is a debut album from the LA-based female duo. And basically, we thought these ladies can rock out with their and the rest of that one. With any of the bad boys and rock and roll going on, they hold up their own. Key tracks included End of the World, Gonna Make My Own Money, Creep Life, and Bad for My Body. In a review, Kevin and I also both agreed that they have probably some of the best, what we call throwaway lyrics that kind of pop up near the end of a verse that just almost put a whole new spin on kind of the way excuse me, it puts a whole new spin on the way you think the lyric's going to go and just goes in a completely different direction. One example we picked up on was from Walk of Shame, and they say, I found things out about you, things I thought I never knew. I got better things to do. I could get breakfast with you. Just stuff like that really made this album very memorable, lyrically and musically, so I had to put it on my list of one of the best debuts of the year. Kevin, what about you? What do you got next?
All right, next up, I have Give In by On and On, which is another album I have not stopped talking about. It was our very first review, and that was probably terrible. But nonetheless, it's a great album. Chicago-based trio. This other band they were in called Scattered Trees broke up and gave us this amazing, amazing band. If you like Snow Patrol and Coldplay, but better, you will like On and On. By the way, it's not on and on and on. And key tracks included Ghost, The Hunter, Bad Mythology, and it's got this kind of moody, heavy vibe to their sound, but it's always very optimistic. And you should check it out. A lot of people that I've referred this album to have told me the same thing. It's one of their best of the year. So do yourself a favor, get into Give In by On and On. Derek?
Absolutely, that's such a good album. A much less complacent Coldplay, if you will, but so much better. My last best debut album of 2013 is Can't Talk Medicine by Pickwick. Pickwick is a sextet out of Seattle, and I think they are Seattle's best export since Starbucks, or coffee in general. They're that good. They blend this soulful R&B sound with just amazingly catchy vocal melodies juxtaposed against sometimes jarring dark lyrics that just, from the start of the album to the end, it's just fantastic. Some of my key tracks are Hacienda Motel, The Round, Lady Luck, Stage Names, Windowsill. I think the lead singer just does a fantastic job in here. A lot of falsetto, but it just fits in fantastically. Almost like Kevin, you mentioned On and On being one of your favorites, just creeping back up in your playlist. This is the same for me all year long.
All right, Derek. Well, this one must be the best debut album of 2013 because we agree on it. It is also the last one on my list, Can't Talk Medicine by Pickwick. As you mentioned, they are a very soulful indie rock band, and I don't know that I can think of another soulful indie rock band. It's a very interesting vibe and sound that they have come up with, and it's very, very good. Derek, you mentioned some key tracks. Hacienda Motel, Stage Names, I really dug with its very like Silence of the Lambs, creepy narrative, and Windowsill with its call and response, Rock Out. Derek, you mentioned they have these dark lyrics. They do, but you wouldn't even know it unless you really listen. You can tell what he's saying, but if you just listen to the feel of it, it's very happy, very upbeat and soulful. So it's this weird dynamic they do that's really nice. And this is the other debut album from 2013 that Derek and I both gave a 5 out of 5 rating. And it's especially impressive because they self-recorded, self-produced, and self-released it all on their own. So strong work, Pickwick. You guys are taking it away with Best Debut Album of 2013.
All right, so there you have it. The best debut albums of 2013 by the authorities here at last week's album. Thanks again for joining us. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel, and apparently we have a newsletter thing going on right now. I have no idea where to sign up for that, so I feel stupid for starting to talk about it without having any information. Kevin?
You can sign up for it on our website or on our Facebook, either one of those, and you can get us in your inbox every frickin' Tuesday. How awesome is that?
Kevin, that is awesome, and it sounds super easy to do.
It is.
All right, so there. Thanks again for joining us. Don't forget to leave a comment. Let us know what you thought was the best debut album of the year. And don't forget to join us again at last week's album, where we're going to continue talking about good music.
All right.
Cheers, everybody.
Cheers, guys. See you next time.